Recent shooting in Waco. 5 biker gangs apparently in a huge war over one another. Apparently they came to this place called Twin Peaks, the restaurant in Waco, Texas, to get along. They were trying to do a peace summit. Didn't work out that way. Now let me give you some of the stats. The stats are bad, and then we'll talk about white-on-white crime, which is a real epidemic in America. So 9 killed, 18 injured, over 170 arrested, over 100 weapons recovered. Okay, so it's already tragic because loss of life is terrible no matter what the circumstances are. We feel terrible about that. Now, law enforcement, curious response here. Now, first of all, they explain how terrible it was. They say, in my nearly 35 years of law enforcement experience, this is the most violent and gruesome scene that I have dealt with. Now, that's the police spokesperson, Patrick Swanton. Okay, so obviously horrific, right? I mean, all sides firing at one another. It's like out of a movie, but it's not a movie. It's real life. Those people actually died. 18 people in the hospital. Some of them still in bad shape. Now, here's the curious part. CNN says authorities had anticipated trouble and pre-positioned officers. Well, then why did this go down the way that it did? In fact, that same police spokesperson says there were at least 3 rival gang groups here this morning for whatever reason. As they were here, we had officers on scene. We expected issues. Now, okay, I'm usually in the camp that says, hey guys, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback and say, oh, how could this tragedy have been prevented? But one way it could have been prevented is if the officers on the scene didn't let them shoot one another, right? So now, to be fair to the cops, they were a couple of seconds away. They weren't necessarily in the diner when the shooting started, although they arrived quickly thereafter. Now, I'm a bad guy, according to conservatives, right-wing people, supporters of the Second Amendment, etc. I would have taken their guns away, and then you know what would have happened? They wouldn't have murdered one another, okay? And they'd all be alive today. Now, I wouldn't take their guns away forever, like no hunting, etc. But if you've got 5 rival gangs and they've got 100 weapons between them, I mean, this is, like people forget in the Wild Wild West, the reason we had to shoot out at the OK Corral is because you had to surrender your weapon as you entered town. Before town, you got issues, you want to go hunting, kill a rabbit, feed yourself, go ahead and have your gun. But if you're entering town, Wyatt Earp needed your gun because he didn't want people fighting in town. Now we're like, have at it, Hoss, bring in 100 people and do a shootout. This is worse than the Wild Wild West. Now, the second aspect of this is white-on-white crime. Okay, now, people talk about black-on-black crime all the time, but Kyle, let's have a conversation about this. Let's be honest about this, right? So, first of all, can you imagine 5 black gangs get together, okay, in South Central? They bring 100 guns with them.
The cops are totally cool with that.
Yeah, the cops
go ahead, guys.
Yeah,
do whatever you want.
The cops are on the scene. They say, oh, well, we knew the 5 black gangs had brought 100 weapons and decided that we're just going to see how it plays out.
Compare this to peaceful protesters in Ferguson. They broke out the tear gas immediately when there were peaceful protesters in Ferguson. Here, these guys already show up with guns, and the cops are like, let's see where this goes. It may end up somewhere good.
Yeah. Well, it didn't. Now, great article in Huffington Post from Julia Craven about this story. And then there were some tweets about it, et cetera. We were thinking along similar lines, but I want to give her credit because she did a great job with it. She came up with some of the stats. In 2011, 83% of white victims were murdered by other whites. White-on-white crime. Where are the fathers?
Let me just say, Cenk, on behalf of all moderate white people, I would like to apologize for the extremist white people. I know that every time a Muslim does something wrong or a black person does something wrong, you can just generalize about the entire group. But with white people just get a pass. If a white person does something wrong, everybody understands that that person is an individual. And to generalize about everybody else in the white community would be ridiculous. It's just that we don't offer that same mindset to black people and to Muslims and to other minority groups.
Yeah, and now let me fill out the numbers more. 3,172 white people were killed in 2011, unfortunately. 2,630 of them lost their lives at the hands of another white person. I mean, we got to wonder what's going wrong in white culture today. I think it's largely the rock and roll music. I think it's very dangerous. Comedian Carrie Caudette also wrote about this. She writes, in 2013, whites led all other groups in aggravated assault, larceny, theft, arson, weapons carrying, and vandalism. When it comes to sexual assault, whites take the forcible rape cake. They're also more likely to kill children, the elderly, family members, their significant others, and even themselves. And she went on to say, so why is white-on-white crime so prevalent, one may ask? Is it the music they listen to? Is it the white divorce rate, resulting in more white children coming from broken homes? Perhaps it's the TV shows they watch or the violent sports they play. Now, as Kyle pointed out, it sounds absurd. It sounds ridiculous. We don't actually make those arguments. See, those are comedians making the arguments because it's ridiculous. But if it's so ridiculous when it comes to whites, why isn't it equally ridiculous when Fox News gets to say it about blacks day in, day out? When, as Kyle pointed out, most of it is during peaceful protests.
And think about how many people that narrative actually convinces. Like, a majority of the Fox News viewers who hear Bill O'Reilly make similar arguments where he quotes statistics about crime amongst blacks, they hear that and they go, oh yeah, that sounds totally reasonable. Bill O'Reilly's right. And the takeaway, the implication is, well, blacks are genetically inferior, and here are some numbers that show that. Well, like you just said, you don't hear on MSNBC, they don't quote these numbers and heavily imply that white people are genetically inferior. With one set, you're allowed to generalize. With the other set, you're not allowed to generalize.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've got an actual conversation about whether Trayvon Martin was a thug when he's the one that got shot in the chest.
Correct.
He was the victim. And then because he was wearing a hoodie, they called him the thug. I mean,
That's all it takes. That's all it takes to call a black person a thug. Yeah. You have a hoodie, you're a thug. White people, gangs, show up with guns, and they're like, well, these might be upstanding citizens just holding true to their Second Amendment rights.